Just to mention that the slideshow that you will see here illustrates examples from the National Folklore Collection, Crusa Féile des Éireann, which have been digitised for the IVRLA. In keeping with the second part of today's title, Ireland's First 100 Years and the UCD IVRLA, I began to think where the discipline of folklore was 100 years ago. At that time, folkloristic studies were very much in their infancy and had not yet developed into an academic subject. This was certainly true in relation to Ireland, although it was not so elsewhere necessarily in Northern Europe or America. The cultural environment in Ireland was such that the collection of oral literature and vernacular culture had moved from the antiquarian to the language enthusiast at the end of the 19th century. Folklore, as a separate discipline, was often seen in terms of a competition at the Irish language cultural event Antireachtas, and was also very much a part of the brief of travelling cultural ambassadors and teachers who were in Conradh na Gaeilge, and these were called Timera or Timeri, and they were very much part of the world of the Gaelic League. Parallels may be drawn between such travelling teachers disseminating knowledge and later collectors of folklore, although it might also be stated that folklore collectors were the gatherers as opposed to the dispensers of information. Both Timeri and folklore collectors made substantial contributions to the establishment and documentation of social and oral histories today. So, in the course of the last 100 years, the humanities have witnessed significant developments both in terms of research and the development of digital repositories. Before digital advances heralded by the IVRLA, the breadth and scope of interdisciplinary studies within the humanities had already made their mark in scholarly research. Of its nature, research continues to change and develop, and new areas and potential collaborations come to light. Former boundaries, such as geographical, linguistic, cultural, and disciplinary concerns, become far less daunting. So the IVRLA is a repository that allows such disciplines to move on further in their pursuit of rigorous analysis, and discussions such as today's event are welcome in order to highlight the significance of the digital humanities in terms of a discipline like folklore. The National Folklore Collection is a specialised archive working towards the augmentation, improvement, and increase of access to research materials, in addition to allowing for preservation of original archival material. Digitisation of original, often vulnerable manuscripts, sound recordings, and photographic items means that the original is consulted less often. But once these items are made available online, what's the next step? How do we allow students and researchers understand the corpus and the wealth of material available online? Before I try to answer such questions, I'd like to reflect on the process that has brought us here, where we are today. In 2005, discussions took place regarding the identification and selection of material for inclusion in the IVRLA. In relation to the selection criteria, a document was communicated to the National Folklore Collection stating that the main goal was to make a corpus of analogue material more easily available and open to new forms of interactivity by exploiting digital technologies and increasing the role of such material in an academic research environment. Given the brief of the IVRLA, questions that Folklore addressed included prioritisation of material, formats to be digitised, and technical standards. So in the end, 3 questionnaires were selected as primary targets. These included the Emigration questionnaire, the Famine questionnaire, and questionnaire relating to travellers. It may be due to the success of publications by Cathal Porter, Cormac O'Grada, and others in relation to oral history and folklore material that it was felt in 2005 that the Emigration questionnaire would lend itself to further interdisciplinary collaboration in historical studies. In 1955, a questionnaire on the subject of Irish emigration to America was compiled by Arnold Schweer in collaboration with Sean O'Sullivan, archivist with the Irish Folklore Commission. The questionnaire was distributed by the Commission to its various full-time and part-time collectors and to its network of respondents around Ireland. The information returned was used as source material for a book by Schweer entitled Ireland and the American Emigration, 1850 to 1900. In all, a total of 21 interviewers located in 16 different counties returned 26 100-page notebooks, more or less completely filled. This valuable material is now available online through the IVRLA. Questions included: do you know of any friends or relatives who went to America before 1900? When did they go? How old were they? What was their occupation? Were they married or single? If married, did they take their family with them or send for them later? Other matters treated in detail in the list of questions revolved around emigrant letters and the notion of the returned Yank. A letter from New York, dated 1859, which was found in the thatch of a house in County Wexford, contains the following: "You will have to come to the country where there is love and liberty." In relation to County Kildare, we have the following account. On February the 18th, 1955, I interviewed Mr. Patrick Cullen, Killan, Edenderry, whose uncle, Mr. John Cullen, emigrated to California in 1860. Mr. John Cullen's family were evicted from the Aston estate in Ballinowlert, Rathangan, County Kildare. There were 700 families evicted the same day. Lord Aston was their landlord. The questionnaire entitled The Great Famine of 1845 to 1852 was circulated in 1945 by the Irish Folklore Commission among its full and part-time collectors and its extensive network of correspondence. This was in response to a request from a group of historians appointed by the government to produce a major study of the famine, marking the 100th anniversary of its outbreak. Some 4,650 handwritten pages of information were recorded by Commission staff and correspondence from oral sources in all 4 provinces, and these were delivered in the same year to the expert group of historians for analysis. All of this material has been digitised and is available through the IVRLA online. A sample question from the famine questionnaire is: please write down any stories or traditions you can find locally about the following: famine deaths, burials, graves and graveyards, the cholera in your district and local fever hospitals at that time. Another account states: graves were made any place. As far as possible, relatives did their best to bury their dead friends in their native churchyard. Graves were made outside of graveyards where deaths were numerous and entailed too much trouble to transfer to other places. The 400 photographs presented in the online IVRLA collection form a representative selection of the photographic element of the National Folklore Collection. The entire photographic collection within the National Folklore Collection consists of some 80,000 images, chiefly the work of the staff of the Irish Folklore Commission and its successors. Parts of the collection were also purchased or donated by private individuals. The work of adding to the collection is ongoing. The photographic material is composed of negatives, transparencies, photographic prints, lantern slides and glass plates. In relation to the photographic collection, material that had already been digitised was made available to the IVRLA by the National Folklore Collection, and then in turn the IVRLA has given this material a higher profile and a broader research context. As the examples illustrate, the images span over 100 years of documenting social life in Ireland. Other material showcased by means of the IVRLA include sound excerpts from recorded interviews made in 1979 to 1980 by the Urban Folklore Project, which documented oral history and personal reminiscences in Dublin and much else besides. The school's manuscripts presented in the online IVRLA material form a representative selection of this 1930s collection within the National Folklore material. Chiefly the work of pupils in the senior classes in national schools, the essays include accounts of many aspects of folk narrative, custom and historical lore. Over 50,000 children took part in the scheme, and the school's collection is one of the most frequently consulted elements within the National Folklore Collection. The most recent phase of IVRLA research activity resulted in a number of significant projects based in the National Folklore Collection. These more recent projects will enhance existing folkloric material in the IVRLA, and they are the Folklore Schools project, which was conducted as part of the series of demonstrator research projects of the IVRLA. The purpose here was to begin to catalogue, number and conserve the primary school copybooks entrusted to the National Folklore Collection under the school scheme. The remit of the IVRLA demonstrator project was to provide digital research resources and to show how digital repositories could not only provide access to archival research materials, but could also present material in new ways and suggest themes for further research. Sample digitisation of the folk song and music collected by Tom Munnelly was also conducted as part of the series of demonstrator research projects. Between 1971 and 2007, Tom Munnelly recorded 1,500 tapes containing over 10,000 songs and also containing folk song related material and narrative lore. And it's the largest collection of traditional song compiled by a single individual in Ireland. The remit of these projects was to provide digital research resources and to show how digital repositories could not only provide access to archival research materials, but could also present it in new ways and suggest themes for future research. This particular project fulfilled the remit by digitising over 1,100 individual songs and instrumental pieces, creating a detailed catalogue to aid further research, and making a sample of the digitised pieces available online. The reports on the various stages of the project discuss the technical and ethical issues encountered, give an overview of the material digitised, and highlight the urgent need for such digitisation work to be continued in order to preserve this collection and to make it more available. And thirdly, the Folklore School Games project was also conducted as part of this series of demonstrator research projects within the IVRLA. The project, which was inspired by the example of the 1930s school scheme, was undertaken from October to December 2009 and collected contemporary accounts of children's games. The photographic and audio files generated in this project contrast with the material that was recorded or taken from children 70 years previously. So this project also entailed an overview of the aims, the planning and conduct of the fieldwork, reports on the material collected and digitised, and suggests ways in which this research could be further developed. A number of research projects, particularly those of an interdisciplinary nature, will doubtless benefit from folklore material in the IVRLA. The integration of digital resources with history and other disciplines has allowed for a new era in accessibility to primary resource materials, thus strengthening perspectives. Researchers might not be aware that what they are searching for exists in a traditional vernacular archive. So the searchability in this combination of materials from the humanities point of view has been greatly enriched. Now, methodological and theoretical frameworks will affect the researcher from the onset of their quest. Individual disciplines will shed light on material from their own perspective, but the IVRLA has enabled researchers to avail of digitised primary source documentation from a number of different repositories within UCD. The perspective of the Irish Folklore Commission in 1955, as evidenced in the Emigration questionnaire, underlines a particular view of identity. The questionnaire was aimed at those who stayed behind, not those who emigrated. More recently, extensive oral history collections relating to emigration were largely based on interviews with the Irish diaspora in England and America for the most part. Of its nature, folklore includes personal accounts which shed light on the wider picture. The many voices spread throughout Ireland created this overall image, while at the same time each account gives the individual experience. The digitised material allows for contemplation on the emergence and development of the Irish state and allows for further review and interpretation in the digital age. The IVRLA introduces innovative access in a global fashion to an extensive historical and cultural archive. It also creates awareness of the potential of digital repositories and presents outputs from research projects in a new format. So, future potential is evident. To take one example, emigration has been a recurring theme in Ireland, and the need to emigrate is one of today's choices, particularly for young people. So just as the Irish Folklore Commission had the foresight in the 1940s and 1950s to document Irish social life in this regard, the ongoing collecting and recording of oral material today can make a significant contribution to the understanding of Irish life and culture.